Dear all, what a pleasure it is to be here with you. My name is Emma van Dorp. I'm from the Protestant Church in Switzerland, and I will be moderating this panel for our conference. We have lived, we have heard, and felt many things during this conference. Now, for this last panel, I invite you to continue on this path. To discuss the future of ecumenism, we have decided to broaden the table, as you can see. This panel will be divided in 3 parts. First, we will hear 2 voices of the present from 2 Getty students. They will read the message of the Getty 2025 and therefore lift up the voices of all the participants of the Getty. Then, 2 youth commissioners will carry a voice of the future and a concrete call to action. Third, we have the honor to hear the voices of 3 well-known ecumenical leaders. Each of them will propose their vision of the future for ecumenism. And finally, another youth commissioner will conclude with a hopeful message for ecumenism. So I invite now Sue San from the Rose of Sharon Lisu Baptist Church of Mainbar and Reverend Miles Baker Hunt from the United Methodist Church in the United States to share the Getty message. Thank you.
Dear members of the 6th World Conference on Faith and Order, before we share the message from Getty 2025, we wish to offer a few words from our journey together. Getty 2025 has been a profoundly meaningful experience, a sacred time of learning, encounter, and transformation. Over these days, we have not only studied theology, but lived it together, listening, worshiping, and discerning what visible means in our world today. We came from many churches, cultures, and traditions, yet found ourselves united in our longing for a faith that heals, reconciles, and renews. Here in Egypt, walking the Via Transformativa, we encounter its deep history of faith, but also its story of suffering, migration, and hope. Through dialogue, prayer, and community life, we discover that unity is not an abstract ideal, but a way of being one that calls us to humility, compassion, and courageous love. We give thanks to all who made this journey possible, our program executive for the Ecumenical Theological Education, our facilitators, chaplains, hosts, and the Coptic Orthodox Church, whose hospitality reminded us of Christ's welcoming love. With hearts full of gratitude and renewed commitment to the ecumenical pilgrimage, we now present the message from the 4th Global Ecumenical Theological Institute, Getty 2025, to the 6th World Conference on Faith and Order.
The 4th Global Ecumenical Theological Institute 2025 brought together emerging ecumenists and theologians at Saint Bishoy Monastery in Wadi El Natrun, Egypt, at the invitation of His Holiness Pope Tawadros II, Pope of Alexandria and Patriarch of the See of St. Mark of the Coptic Orthodox Church. The 6th World Conference on Faith and Order gathered under the theme of Where now for visible unity? This conference provides a capstone moment to what has been called an ecumenical year. This message itself holds a distinct and historic place within the ecumenical movement, being the first of its kind to be presented to the World Council of Churches Faith and Order Conference. In many ways, this presents a distinctive starting point for deep listening and intentional intergenerational dialogue. The issues facing the world and the churches. We live in an intersectional reality of multi-crisis, including but not limited to ongoing colonial and neo-colonial legacies, violence against indigenous peoples, discrimination, persecution, climate catastrophe, gender-based violence, sexual abuse and femicide, human trafficking, injustices against children, economic injustice, famine, war, genocide, forced displacement, authoritarianism and nationalism, fundamentalism, and the misuse of artificial intelligence. These crises are compounded by delayed justice and the paralysis of words without effective redemptive action. This reality requires the church to respond with lament, anger, and courage, asking, how do we embody our unity in diversity as we respond to the multi-crisis of our world across our varied contexts? We celebrate the work of Faith and Order while also lamenting the expanding gap between dialogue and praxis, manifested in the lack of robust reception of ecumenical texts. Ecumenical theology often seeks unity through doctrinal coherence, and yet we must also explore how unity becomes visible through our embodied experience. So we ask, what does it mean to be truly ecumenical, ecumenically and prophetically courageous in our world, offering glimpses of hope in the brokenness of our world? We call the church to locate itself centrally within the continuous sufferings of humanity and all of creation, rather than standing apart from it. Prophetic duty and kenotic embodiment. We call the church to live its prophetic duty, to speak truth to power in all its forms, standing in solidarity with the poor and the oppressed, following in the incarnational way of Christ, who entered into human reality, the Word made flesh, dwelling in solidarity with the downtrodden. This solidarity requires fearless unity in our shared witness and resistance to unjust systems rather than placating and conforming to them. There are those who hate the one who upholds justice in court and detest the one who tells the truth, says the prophet Amos. Our shared ecumenical theology cannot be only abstract in nature. Rather, it is our imperative to canonically embody Christ, emptying ourselves for the other. This proposed theological turn to kenosis is understood as the humility and love to willingly relinquish power and privilege in order to form mutual relationships of equality and compassion with the marginalized. In our kenotic embodiment, we offer service with open hands to the other, working together towards life and the unequivocal promotion of human dignity alongside the dignity of all creation, knowing that the whole creation has been groaning together as it suffers together the pains of labor. This kenotic approach invites embodied interaction and mutual vulnerability as paths towards overcoming division. As we embody a living and breathing faith, we are called to be faithful interpreters of church memory, including the councils and the creeds, proposing faithful ways rooted in our rich Christian tradition, and yet remaining both living and accessible for our diverse context today. Faithfully interpreting theology in our diverse context does not limit or somehow change our one holy Catholic and apostolic nature. No, it rather expands our faithfulness, speaking into our present contextual realities. Such a way of reading allows our ancient confessions to speak anew in context of marginalization and hope. For this, we need to cultivate wounded discipleship, glimpsed at Getty, where we learned to share pain and remember truthfully together. Unity emerges as the church learns to stay when it is hard, listen when it costs, remember what hurts, and hope against the odds. Unity becomes visible when the church prophetically shares pain, remembers truthfully, and lives the hope-abundant life together in Christ.
Reimagining faith and order for the 21st century. Getty's hope is in shared humanity and an ecumenism born of pain and promise. We call faith and order to deepen its engagement with the lived theology of people at the margins. Visible unity cannot be achieved solely through institutional or doctrinal dialogue, but must additionally engage the reality of displacement, poverty, and pain in refugee camps, migrant shelters, in the exploited art, and in communities where visible unity is practiced daily through survival, reconciliation, and solidarity. If ecumenical councils such as Nicaea stood to articulate our shared common faith, what will faith and order do to protect justice, human dignity, and the integrity of all creation? The church participates in the life of Christ when we embrace and embody Christian theology. This is the solidarity of the shaken, where unity arises through shared vulnerability and compassion. As such, we cannot neglect Jesus' passion for it embodies Christ, God's solidarity with suffering humanity. If the Eucharist signifies the broken body of Christ, then our communion as Christ's body is called to share in that same suffering sent into the world as wounded healers. Getty shows us that unity is God's gift, received when we are brave enough to be wounded together and discover we have always been one body. In a world of graves, broken bodies, and defiled creation, we envision a new, contemporary, visible unity arising from recognition of our shared pain and our mutual commitment to action. Indeed, we are longing for an ecumenism in which we bring all of ourselves to the journey and to the table, not separating thought from prayer, prayer from action, or action from thought. When we do just it, love mercy and walk humbly with God, we come to smell the sweet scent of resurrection. Theology that only intrigues the mind while neglecting wounded bodies, it's complicit in injustice. We need a connected church that empties itself in service, presence, and concrete solidarity. We therefore call for healing solidarity cycles, community-based theological gatherings where refugees, women, people with disabilities, youth, and grassroots leaders contribute to theological reflection. Our hope is not abstract optimism, but a call to embody the abundant life Christ promises. Even amid disorder and uncertainty, unity takes shape in acts of solidarity, shared lament, and collaborative service. In the face of diverse contexts and the loss of credibility of the church in many spaces across the world, the church's witness and encouragement is contingent upon its willingness to within the ecumenical table. It must open itself to a new generations, digital spaces, and creative form of theology, reflecting the church's diversity and vitality. As churches continually expand the table and grow in hospitality into these new shared reality, these spaces will respond with engagement by embracing participatory and imaginative methods. Faith and Order can reclaim its prophetic vocation as a moment where theology is not only articulated, but lived and shared. Indeed, churches are confronted with a world faced with intersectional multi-crisis. As the crisis deepens day by day, what both the oppressor and the oppressed can legitimately demand of the churches is a message of hope. The church then is called to proclaim eschatological hope amidst global suffering and injustice, and to make the church credible in its practices, its economy, and its internal life. Getty urges Faith and Order to employ a theological language, speaking meaningfully into today's wounded world, calling the churches to embody the kenotic, self-emptying love of Christ. Let us act with humility, walk in unconditional solidarity, and announce with prophetic courage the hope which dwells within us. We now invite a moment of silence to reflect on this message and how it might shape our ongoing theological process.
On behalf of Getty, we would now like to invite the Reverend Professor Dr. Stephanie Dietrich, moderator of the Commission on Faith and Order, to receive a copy of this message, which represents many fruits of our collective theological reflections. It is our shared hope this message will take its place in ecumenical history as we continue the pilgrimage together towards visible unity.
This is just wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for challenging us. Thank you for telling us bravely where you want us to go. I was also very happy to see that quite a lot of what you are asking for is actually also issues we are already discussing in the Faith and Order Commission. You might not get the impression that Faith and Order is discussing all of what you are asking for, but I think we are on a good way, and the challenge we receive from you is so important for our work. We will take it forward. It will be a part of the procedures of this conference, and your presence here really has been a huge blessing and contribution to our being together at this World Conference. So thank you, and thank you for challenging us the way you are doing. Thank you.
What a powerful moment. This message shows how much you have all worked and discussed for a theological discourse that is relevant for today, and we are very thankful for your message. And now I invite Maouli Assemidi to be a voice from the future from 2050. He is from the Evangelical Presbyterian Church of Togo. Currently, he is studying Protestant theology at Philipps University in Marburg, Germany. He is a member of the Faith and Order Commission and of the Young People in the Ecumenical Movement Commission. He is also a member of Young Theologians of the Communion of Protestant Churches in Europe, CPCE. His theological focus is on systematic theology and intercultural discourse in theology.
Thank you very much. One day, during a conversation, a teacher asked a young man what he could do to reach the greatest unity that exists. After a short discussion, they both agreed that to reach that unity, it is important to love God and to love one's neighbors. But since the teacher was confused about the meaning of the word neighbor, he asked the young man, "Who do you think is my neighbor? What do you mean?" Perhaps the teacher was confused because he was seeking a deeper explanation of this word which holds such great significance. Sometimes our academic, theological, or confessional orientations make us expect more than what is required to understand or to act. Sometimes in our ecumenical gatherings, we pretend not to know or not to see who our neighbors are. We can be somewhat hypocritical, and we do not listen to our neighbors to understand them or their context when they tell their stories. Dear ecumenical friends, if the condition for reaching the highest unity is not only to love God, but also to love our neighbors, then I ask you, who is your neighbor? By knowing who your neighbor is, how do you see him? Where do you find her? And what prevents you from seeing them in a way that leads to unity? Young people in the ecumenical movement are concerned about what is happening to the neighbors, people affected by conflicts, wars, the climate emergency, violence, racism, discrimination, and the many injustices occurring in our world. Today, we imagine ourselves in the future, the year 2050, looking back at the past and analyzing the progress made in 25 years of ecumenism from 2025 to 2050. We recognize that the struggles have not been easy, but we have been able to achieve significant successes. One, by 2050, gender and race are no longer barriers to the exercise of power in the church. The fact that women are no longer systematically excluded from positions of responsibility in the churches and that violence against women has declined would have been unimaginable 25 years ago. Today, Gender is no longer an obstacle to leadership in the church. This is thanks to the courageous young people who refused to be dominated by patriarchy any longer 25 years ago. Discrimination and violence of all kinds related to human identity and dignity have declined, even though some differences remain among churches. Two. In 2050, young people are consistently included in decision-making bodies and church structures because they have been entrusted with responsibility. They bring to the agenda our daily struggles and stories. Together, young and experienced people address issues that had been ignored for too long. We are proud to see greater participation by young people in leadership at local, national, regional, and global levels, regardless of their gender, sexuality, age, skin color, or social status, both in the church and in society. This is especially vital where autocratic and dictatorial systems have stifled the voices of the voiceless. 3. By 2050, churches have re-examined systems that tolerate injustice, those that have harm human dignity and creation itself. We take as examples the work of ecumenical bodies that stand with oppressed and vulnerable people. These churches have acknowledged that some of their own structures once tolerated injustices, but they have now spoken the truth to themselves, fought for human rights, and become a bulwark against climate crisis and forms of oppression. 4. As we gather now, reflecting on 25 years of AI's transformation of our world, we can affirm that the digital age did not erase humanity. It redefined our understanding of it. To be human in the digital area is to live consciously within networks of creation and technology while remaining oriented toward communion with God and one another. The challenge before us remains the same as in 325, to discern how divine life is incarnated in changing worlds. What began as anxiety about machines has become by 2050 a deeper awareness of our vocation to humanize technology, to be responsible and accountable in its use, to employ it meaningfully and lovingly, and to let even the digital world bear witness to the image of God. 5. By 2050, mental health discussions are no longer taboo. The ecumenical movement takes them seriously and creates safe spaces and systems of accountability around issues such as anxiety, depression, and burnout. It provides support and pastoral care to those suffering from mental health challenges and recognizes their medical aspects. The ecumenical movement has raised awareness and equipped churches to end the stigma, promoting understanding instead of judgment in spiritual communities. 6. The future remains uncertain for us. Wars continue. The barbaric killing of children, men and women, and genocide still occur. But this does not discourage us, and it will not discourage us. We are no longer prepared to weep over our faith, nor do we seek permission from others to express our frustrations. We do what we believe is essential and indispensable for our survival. For us, speaking out, acknowledging the limitations of ecumenical structures, and taking initiative are not matters of prestige. They are conditions for survival because we and our neighbors, we are dying. And now, these three things remain for us: our existential fears, our unfulfilled dreams, and our hope and faith. But the greatest of these is our hope and faith, nourished by the love of God, which erases our fears and leads us to visible unity. Therefore, even in 2050, the young people of the ecumenical movement believe it is important to rethink how ecumenical bodies work together to achieve unity. And again, I ask you, who is your neighbor? Thank you.
Now that Mawuli has talked about 2050 and has asked us a question, I invite Jacqueline to answer. Jacqueline is a reverend ordained in the United Methodist Church in Kenya. And she serves as vice moderator of the World Council of Churches Commission on Faith and Order. Let me just add that it is the first time that we have a youth moderator in our commission. She is an adjunct lecturer She is also an adjunct lecturer at St. Paul's University in Kenya, where she teaches gender and systematic theology. She also holds the position of secretary in the Circle of Concerned African Women Theologians. So, Jackie, what is the call to action from young people in the ecumenical movement?
Thank you so much, moderator. We, the young people in the ecumenical movement, stand in unbreakable solidarity with the marginalized, the excluded, and those pushed to the peripheries of the world. We pledge our lives to bearing witness to justice, reconciliation, and unity here and now. As my colleague Mauli has so powerfully envisioned, the future we long for will not arrive on its own. It demands action today. We affirm that unity is no distant dream. It is a living, breathing commitment to justice, dialogue, mutual respect, mutual care, and radical love for one another. As young people, we hunger for a communion that shatters harmful divisions, selfish distractions, and toxic differences. We look forward to an ecumenism that makes God's reconciling love visible in the church and in the world. We call the church to rise beyond eloquent statements and polished words to action. We ask the church to listen to the cries of the oppressed, learn from the wisdom of the wounded, act together so that faith becomes a revolutionary force for the reconciliation of this fractured world. The ecumenical future will only flourish if we boldly choose justice over comfort, truth over silence, and love over fear. We commit to tireless action until every corner of this earth is made habitable to all, free from discrimination, bias, or prejudice. Young people are not waiting. Please, ecumenical friends, join us. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you. Thank you for all the young voices. That reminds us that we have to work on our theologies and we have to act according to these transformed theologies. We now turn to our ecumenical leaders as they answer this question. With your experience in ecumenism and different perspectives, how do you envision the future of ecumenism? Where do you think that we could see more signs of visible unity? And I invite first Reverend and Professor Esther Mombo to answer. She teaches in the School of Theological at Simple's University on History, Ecumenism, and African Women's Theologian. She has served the WCC as co-moderator of the Ecumenical Theological Formation, and she is also a member of the Circle Concerned African Women Theologians.
Thank you very much for allowing me to participate in this last panel, which is intergenerational. Thank you for the work that has gone ahead of us, that we've been engaged with during these last few days. In envisioning the future, I'm not sure whether we want to envision it or to accept that the future is here. The future is here because, as we discuss, we hear voices that have for a long time been marginalized. Those voices, we hear them here today. We do want to admit, personally, that as I teach ecumenism to students at my university, one of the things that is normally raised is which ecumenism, not where ecumenism. It is argued that ecumenism is taking place among people in the villages, people who share the joys and challenges within their communities. So when I think of the future of ecumenism, which is here now, I want to look at the shared witness and actions that we take all along global crises. And some of those crises have been mentioned through the statement of the young people. Crisis of poverty, climate change, migration, gender injustice, exclusion, and discrimination along gender lines or along sexual orientation. Ecumenical movement, therefore, has to be contextual and inclusive, engaging voices from all parts of the world, particularly voices that have been marginalized, as I've said, voices of women, voices of youth, and voices of indigenous communities. In the era of digital communication and global connectivity, we see a transforming space for our ecumenical engagement. As Christians, we are collaborating across denominations and continents more easily than before. However, the digital divide continues to be a source of challenge because there are many who are excluded from the same context. Theologically, the future of ecumenism that we see here now has to emphasize reconciled diversity rather than uniformity, valuing distinct traditions and seeking common witness to Christ in the world. The vision of unity is that shifting from institutional mergers to collaborative mission, mutual learning, and shared spirituality. I want to use the example of young people. They've been mentioned here before, the Gen Z in Kenya 2024. The group of young people characterized by social consciousness and desire for change were prepared and still prepared to respond to what are old issues and asking new questions. In their movement to occupy the government, occupy religious institutions, these young people brought to light or challenged existing hierarchies, power relations, and structures that they considered encouraging and enabling historical and ongoing inequalities. For them, they argued that the current ways of dealing with the challenges of society were ill-equipped to tackle the critical questions of the time. And by raising their voices, they were saying we need to start thinking differently because the world is not the same. Secondly, the young people brought to light issues of inclusive, ethical, and community-centered approaches that addressed historical injustices, promoting sustainability, and reimagining both economics and faith in ways that are relevant and equitable for contemporary society. The young people brought forward another way of speaking, another language of ecumenism for that matter. Thirdly, the efforts of these young people in Kenya reflected a community that was forced to rethink and restructure systems that aligned with principles of equity, inclusivity, and cultural relevance, ultimately seeking to overcome the enduring impact of colonialism and other structural systems of inequalities. Looking at those three challenges that the young people brought to light in Kenya last year, that I also see we are engaged in, brought to light a vision of ecumenism using the image of the circle of concerned African women theologians. But that image of the circle is an image that I would want to look at once more. A circle that expands forever. A circle that covers all who wish to hold hands. A circle whose size depends on each other. A circle whose vision is solidarity, cooperation, mutuality, and care. That, as a vision of ecumenism, is a vision that leads me then to quote scripture, is what I see as ecumenism of the now and of the future. And I quote the book of Revelation, chapter 7, verse 9, which says, "After this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb." Revelation 7:9, therefore, is a vision that brings to light issues around dignity and value of each and all children of God, because there is that of God in all of us. In essence, therefore, and from the discussions that I've taken on in this space, the future of ecumenism is experiential, relational, and transformative. It will be sustained not by structures alone, but by communities of believers who, through lived experience, continue to discover that unity is God's gift and humanity's calling. The future of ecumenism is now, and thank you all for helping us to realize that future.
Thank you, Reverend Professor Esther Mambo. Now let's listen to His Grace Metropolitan Gevageze Kyrillos and see his answer. He is a bishop of the Syrian Orthodox Church in India. He is a former moderator of WCC Commission on World Mission and Evangelism and a current member of the WCC Commission on Education and Ecumenical Formation. He is also the founder of the Indian Center for Social Change, a program for the mentally challenged in India.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Getty. It has been a long journey for the modern ecumenical movement ever since its beginning at the Edinburgh World Mission Conference in 1910. For the World Council of Churches, particularly within the context of the Faith and Order Commission, it has been, for the most part, a journey which can be called ecumenism of the head. However, at the Karlsruhe Assembly, as we heard this morning, the World Council of Churches, through its unity statement, was urged to pursue unity in terms of ecumenism of the heart, underlining the need to go beyond the traditional, intellectual, and formal ways of searching for unity. Ecumenism of the heart is inspired by love and is rooted in deep and reciprocal relationships. While the shift from the emphasis on the head to the heart is appreciated, I do think it is time we move to the next level, what I would like to call ecumenism of the feet or ecumenism of the margins. Feet represent theologically and culturally the margins and the marginalized. Let me give you an example. In my country, India, the age-old caste system has its deep roots in a particular strand of Hinduism, according to which the four castes of people in hierarchical order were created from the body of God. The uppermost caste people are believed to have originated from the head of God, whereas the next two lower caste people came from the arms and thighs of God, respectively. And the lowest of all castes, the servant class, had their origin from the feet of God. In other words, the lowest caste people and Dalits, the so-called untouchables in India, are identified with the feet. It is at the feet, at the margins, that future ecumenism as a prophetic movement should pitch its tent, that is, among the poor and the oppressed. Jesus washing the feet of his disciples was a concrete expression of his identification with the marginalized. It was much more than an act of humility and servant leadership. It was a countercultural act. Washing the feet of others, of masters, was a job that was imposed on the slave class during the time of Jesus. It was therefore a subversive act, where Jesus not only expressed his oneness and solidarity with the slaves, but also demonstrated the reversal of power structures. By turning to the feet, Jesus turned to the lowliest. And by washing their feet, he also transformed the unjust systems of power and domination. As it is proverbially expressed, at the foot of the cross, all ground is level. It is therefore at the feet level that we experience unity in terms of equality, solidarity, and justice. Ecumenism of the feet, therefore, is an egalitarian movement that pursues unity vis-a-vis justice. We also encounter this trend of reversal of the status quo in the Acts of the Apostles, chapter 13. Here we note that the ecclesial landscape has changed, and the center of gravity has shifted from Jerusalem to Antioch, where Simon, also called Niger, the black African slave, is also appointed among the 5 leaders of the church in Antioch. The choice of Simon, also called Niger, the black African slave, as a leader of the church, stirred up the community of the church and even threatened the empire. This is important because only the marginalized have the moral stamina to resist injustice and bring about transformation. Ecumenism of the feet of the margins is one that upsets the status quo and challenges the empires. It is one where the marginalized affirm their agency and claim their power and leadership. Feet, as we know, also connect us to the earth, to the environment, to the oikos. Feet are our points of contact with nature. Ecumenism of the feet, therefore, is an organic movement where justice, including eco-justice and climate justice, is addressed with a sense of urgency. In short, ecumenism of the feet, of the margins, has the potential to liberate the ecumenical movement from its metaphysical captivity and bureaucratic institutionalism. While ecumenism of the head, for the most part, remained at the level of theological discourse, ecumenism of the heart brought it down to the level of diaconia, often understood as charity or compassion. Ecumenism of the feet, however, takes it further down to discipleship, subversive discipleship, that is. While ecumenism of the head and the heart can sit comfortably with imperial structures and can function without necessarily challenging the empires of our times, ecumenism of the feet offers us a vision of an anti-imperial and a prophetic movement of people at the margins. Whereas ecumenism of the head has been about faith-seeking understanding, ecumenism of the heart can be perceived in terms of faith-seeking compassion and charity. Ecumenism of the feet, on the other hand, is about faith-seeking justice. It demands that our discourse about the mystery of God must have its feet grounded in the misery of people and the planet. Unlike the ecumenism of the head and the heart, ecumenism of the feet represents a bottom-up approach, a movement of and at the margins. It is at the level of the feet that the word assumes flesh. If love is the language, then justice is its grammar. If love is the language, then justice is its grammar. And if God is love, then justice is how God acts in history. Faith without justice is dead. Likewise, unity without justice is mere vanity. The role of future ecumenism, as I understand it, in terms of ecumenism of the feet, is to provide the grammar of justice to the language of God, to the language of love. So where now for visible unity? Ecumenism of the feet would challenge us to go to the margins where the actual church is, as the wounded and broken body of Christ. It is at the feet level, it is at the foot of the cross, it is at the margins of our society that unity in terms of justice, equality, and solidarity is to be sought and actualized. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding us to work on ecumenism of the feet. Finally, we read and we hear Reverend Dr. Angelique Walker-Smith as she comes to us from the National Baptist Convention of USA. She serves as WCC President from North American Turtle Island and strategic for Pan-African Orthodox and Ecumenical Faith Engagement at Bread for the World in Washington, D.C. She also serves on the governing board governance roles for the National Council of Churches in the USA and served as the president of the historic Black churches and Christian Churches Together. She received a doctorate degree from Princeton Theological Seminary, Master of Divinity from Yale University Divinity School, and undergraduate degree from Kent State University.
Good evening. So I hear I have the last word. So many words have already been stated, and I certainly want to recognize and celebrate what has already been presented. I don't really want to repeat what we've already heard. I just want to say, as a good Baptist, amen and ashe. So I begin in that regard. That being said, I will offer a few more comments to the discussion. First and foremost, I would like to say we must be a Sankofa people. What do I mean by that? We have been doing that for the past few days. We've been going back to fetch for this moment and for the future. I think we must always remember that God's people have always been a Sankofa people. And that is one of the reasons why these past days have been so significant. We have come to this conference, many of us wounded, living in a spirit of lament, and also a spirit of love and hope. As we've had discussions, those early pioneers during the period of the Council of Nicaea came in similar fashion. We are those persons today. Today, we are the Council of Nicaea. Today, we have the opportunity to come just as we are, as we say in the Baptist Church, just as we are, in our brokenness, in our authenticity, and with a heart that some call an ecumenism of the heart to the task. Yes, an ecumenism of the mind and of that mindset, but also, as my brother has said, an ecumenism of the feet. But we bring all of that. And the table says, bring all of you to the table. Not just part of you, not just your mind, but bring your heart and your full self. These past days, we've had an opportunity to do some of that. And so it is with these observations in mind, I would like to offer some virtues that I think will help get us to the future. This has been mentioned before, but here I am getting to say it again in my own way. First and foremost, again, remember your baptism. Remember where you were at that moment, or however that happened for you. Remember your conversion. Remember how the Lord brought you before the day of today. Remember. And remember the ancestors who came before you. When we do this, we acknowledge the virtue of humility. Because when you understand the great cloud of witnesses and that you didn't just get here, it is humbling. So the gift of humility. And this gift of humility will help us to give the gift of hospitality. Hospitality when it's hard. Hospitality when it seems like a wonderful moment of enlightenment. The devotional life related to this will help to carry us into the future. Second, we've heard earlier this point as well, relationships. Relationships matter, but here we make a distinction. Not just the relationships of your confessional space or of your denominational space, of your cultural space that may be a bit more comfortable. No, what I've learned is the ecumenical journey is learning to be comfortable with what is uncomfortable. Finding your rhythm and your spiritual disciplines that help you to be comfortable in your discomfort. Third, going back to this idea of being invitational. What this really means is creating space for those who you don't want to keep space with, or keeping space with those who are younger, who are coming along, and not just young adults, but we're in the land where the Holy Child, the baby, came with the Holy Family. We have an opportunity to train up our young from the earliest ages, how we are with babies and children, as well as the young adults. They will remember when they are older. So once again, creating space across the generational lines. And then I would offer this gift of courage. And I think this is probably one of the toughest ones. Courage to not just have relationships with people who you're uncomfortable with or are comfortable with, but courage to confront those who do not share our values. Courage to take on policies and practices that are not only historic, but exist today in this neo and re-colonial moment of today. There is so much revisitation, especially as I think about my own North American Turtle Island context, that is perpetuated not only in my, quote, home context, but that has been put upon this world. I want you to be assured there are people in North America, Turtle Island context, who do not share those values. Yes, sometimes we feel like we're a remnant in those places, but I want you to feel assured there are those of us who are joining and will always join you as a Sankofa people to say authoritarianism, policies that do not embrace, policies that are unjust, must always be held accountable. And so to say to you, in this moment of being able to go forward, it will be the Trinity. It will be the remembrance. It will be the prayers. And it will be our courage together as we enhance and deepen our devotional life to take us through. God bless you.
Your answers have been a good reminder that we still need to do a lot, but we have already done a lot too. Thank you. And on that note, let us conclude with a hopeful message from Tijana Petković-Breć. She is from the Serbian Orthodox Church and a teaching assistant at the Faculty of Applied Science at the University of Ludwigsburg. Her PhD is in systematic theology on one of the challenges of modern technologies and ethics. She is also a member of the Faith and Order Commission.
Thank you, Emma. So I will just conclude and I will try to explain why you got all the small presents at the entrance in this room. So looking forward, it becomes clear that our ecumenical journey will not be about bureaucratic degrees. The true foundation of these is far more humble. We will begin with the little and small things. Like mustard seeds, our first steps are small, almost invisible, but they carry within them the strength of eschatological hope and the promise of growth. We are connecting on a personal level, heart to heart, community to community, rather than waiting someone to declare what is good and what is permissible. We close to listen deeply to Triune God, to one another, and to the silent cries of the world around us. And we long for more respect, for more openness, more imagination. We seek new ways and new approaches, yet in doing so, we will also rediscover ancient wisdom that had been present for over 2 millennia. That truth is lived in relationship, and that love demands both courage and honesty. In the past, the path was not built by mere agreement. Our hope did not grow because we always shared the same opinion. On the contrary, it deepened because we refused to remain silent about the things we could not accept, and we learned to walk together even in the tension of disagreement. In that honesty, respect was born. In that respect, trust was planted. And in trust, hope took root. So today, we can say that the ecumenical movement endures because it was and is nurtured by this hope. We believe, against all odds, that walking together is possible. What begins as fragile seeds will now become a living tree. Under whose branches, many can find shade and belonging. The symbol of the mustard seed reminds us that everything begins with a small, the personal, the daring step of faith. And it calls us still to continue planting seeds of hope so that the future of unity may grow in ways we cannot yet imagine. Thank you. We also kindly invite the Getty participants to come in front of the stage. Together with them, we also invite young delegates, advisors, stewards, logos, scouts, all you to join. Let's give them all around the applause and thank you for your action today and also in the future.
Thank you all for your dear and very active participation in this panel and during the whole 2 weeks that you have done a lot and also for the last 5 days for the whole conference. Thank you, and thank you for the panelists who have been here today and have shared their vision for future ecumenism. There is hope, beauty, and we rejoice in it. Thank you.